So, yeah, nothing like giving me the extra nerves to get me through.
You're going to do awesome.
Great to see all of you. Great to see you, Sarah. Great to see you, Luke and Gretchen and everybody else. And thank you, everybody else, for your patience as we figured out all of these technical issues to get things going. So, all right. I'm actually going to go ahead and pause the video here. I'm going to get my presentation back up now that everything is going.
And the way we're going to do the Q&A is if you would type in your question into the chat, and then we'll repeat them back to Jeff.
Okay, and I'm just going to verify once I've got things going here that you can see my screen. Okay, so you can see my screen, right?
Yes, we see the super car. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so here we go. All right, so. All right, so everybody, my name is Jeff Bloomer, and I grew up in the St. Louis Metro East area of Southern Illinois, which is where my family owned a small chain of movie theaters throughout most of my youth and teen years. So as a result of growing up in that entertainment industry, I developed a very healthy interest in both movies and comic books. And while many who knew me both then and now might consider me like a big Star Wars fan, but my true passion has always been centered around like that heroic character of Superman and collecting comic books, particularly during the mid to late 80s. Of course, these days, I also enjoy spending plenty of time with my family, whether it's in an amusement park or out hiking, as you can see me here with my wife, Deanne. Why Superman, you ask? Well, the answer is fairly simple. As I previously mentioned, my family owned a small chain of movie theaters until the larger companies moved into the area in the late 80s. My dad was the general manager, and in the latter part of 1979, one of his managers had to take a leave of absence. And my dad decided to reward me, his 8-year-old son at the time, for finishing my homework by taking me to weekend matinees to watch Superman while he ran the theater. Learning to thread the projectors with my dad was also a plus, but at one point, I probably knew Christopher Reeve's lines better than he did. When I couldn't watch the movies anymore, I had developed enough of an addiction. I started seeking out the old syndicated reruns on TV. Of course, my mother couldn't have been happier, since the old George Reeves show was a favorite of hers when she was young. And who could blame her? That show was just as unforgettable with its iconic introduction, and I might have used it once or twice out there as an introduction on social media, just for fun. Well, all kids must become adults, and in 2013, this comic book kid and movie kid, eventually went to work for the largest grocery retailer in the United States, which is where I also had the honor of working on the Adobe Analytics implementation for their first e-com solution called ClickList, and which we have now all come to simply call Kroger Pickup. Of course, that labor of love could not have been accomplished without the collaboration of a very large team of Kroger developers and other valuable partners. In fact, I was the senior implementation specialist for Kroger Digital from 2014 until I was promoted to manager of digital analytics at Kroger Personal Finance in January 2019. KPF's primary lines of business are represented by gift cards, credit cards, by partnering with US Bank, and money services. And by the way, we go to we go to business and drive value by partnering with third-party vendors through what's called a hub and spoke model. Now, over the course of this job, I've encountered and learned many important things by one particular topic that has carried significant value during that time has been campaign tracking. When I'm done speaking with you today, my goal is to hopefully have a measurable impact on your job as both an analyst and as a manager of data. So that brings us to the topic of our discussion. What is campaign tracking? Well, campaign tracking in its most basic form identifies how your customers discover your site. So think about how we already track what our customers do within our websites and mobile apps. And it really shouldn't take a great leap for us to also have the desire to understand how they arrived there as well. So if I borrowed an example using one, like my favorite superhero, how was Superman transported to Earth? Now, depending upon your age and what movies you've seen in the comics you've read, I probably just started a healthy debate. Yes, we would. Yes, we would probably use the general term of rocket, right, just to describe the form of projectile used to escape Krypton. But exactly what form did that rocket take? Was it an old-fashioned rocket, like something right out of a Flash Gordon movie, or something more like that modern rocket, organic rocket we've seen in the movies and TV shows? Or maybe it looked like that giant snow cone with crystal spikes sticking out of it, slowly melting as it entered Earth's atmosphere. And you might be saying, yeah, who cares? They sent him to Earth in a rocket. Move on. But remember, these kinds of details become more important because when we start talking later about basic elements of what we should capture in our campaign tracking, things like channel, source, or medium, for example, hey, that's a great little exercise just to start out. Just using a campaign name of like Save Cal, what would you propose to use as values for channel, source, medium for a campaign? I mean, no right or wrong answers, just curious. And we can save your answers for later and compare once we get to the end. And Gretchen and you guys, you can just keep these off to the side. Just put them into the chat bot or whatever, Just think about this, channel, source, medium. Just keep them off to the side and we can discuss them later on, okay? So moving on. Okay, now that we've got those juices flowing a little bit, think about this. What do campaign codes look like, right? If you think about it, campaign tracking codes are just as different and unique as the comic book heroes, their costumes, cinematic universes, and the studios that belong to, right? I mean, you know the drill. With all the different incarnations from movie to movie, TV show, from decade to decade, or even from comic book to comic book, things can get really complicated really fast. Just think about the differences in campaign tracking codes you can encounter between, two different platforms. Google uses UTM parameters, which you can even, use in Adobe Analytics, but we typically use what's called a CID, short for campaign ID, right out of the box. Or if we want to get even more fancy, we can set up parameters and then configure Adobe Analytics to simply watch for those too. And then do we ever start watching the campaign tracking code start rolling in? And it's every version of a comic book character you can possibly imagine. So here's one parallel you may even consider, where Warner decided to poke a little fun at their own differences using their Crisis crossover series on the CW. Brandon Routh, who played Superman in the movies, reprised his own character again on the show alongside Tyler Hoechlin, who represented the Superman of that universe. And then Tom Welling represented yet a third incarnation of Superman, Clark Kent, from the Smallville universe, who had decided to, give up his powers. Yeah. Small spoiler, okay. Then Grant Gustin and Ezra Miller shared the screen for a brief time for a comedic Flash encounter, while there were other parts of the show when Grant Gustin also shared the screen with John Wesley Shipp the Flash from the 90s TV series. And then, in fact, they took the opportunity to present all manner of many incarnations of our favorite superheroes during this 6-part crossover series that we saw all kinds of things we didn't expect. Thankfully, though, even they had the presence of mind to leave out certain elements. We've all seen the same thing with campaign tracking codes within our own companies. Just the 4 campaign codes here demonstrate enough disparity to make one's own mind hurt. Now, imagine hundreds of thousands of campaign tracking codes coming in through an organization, yet no discipline in their creation on the front end. Yep. In no time flat, you've got an end product, much like Zack Snyder's original Justice League from 2019, an oversized Charlie Foxtrot comprised of absolute gobbledygook, probably stitched together by an unwitting third party that will only serve to further frustrate and confuse you. Phew. Okay. So you're probably thinking, if it's that complicated, why should I even bother to care about campaign tracking codes or campaign tracking in general? Okay, that's a good question. Let me ask you this. In the comic book world, what do you think each of these people care about? The almighty dollar. In fact, how many storylines can you remember where either they or any other main characters have been required to follow the money? And much like those characters, is it not our job to follow our customers and what they do when they are on our websites? Naturally, smart businesses also want to know how a customer got there. Why? So we can market to them better. We want them to come back and buy more stuff. So before we get caught up in what a campaign tracking code should contain, let's get back to the basics. When I think of campaign tracking and configuration, I immediately start to think of Superman's Fortress of Solitude. And the thought process it must have taken his father, Jor-El, to make sure everything came out right when he needed it. Now, we don't have to be nearly that complicated starting out. But if we were going to have any kind of meaningful reporting in the future, we at least need to plan some sort of rudimentary details. So keeping that in mind, when we talk about campaign tracking, ultimately what we're affecting is our marketing channels. If we were super patient and careful like Jor-El, then maybe we could even imagine perfectly configured channels, like the crystalline tubes perfectly arranged here, in the Fortress of Solitude. But realistically, we should start things out a bit simpler. In fact, Adobe Analytics makes it easier by providing basic marketing channels for us right out of the box. Channels like paid search, natural search, email, social networks and affiliate, and then display ads. The way we affect these marketing channels depends on how we configure the processing rules behind the scenes to manage the campaign tracking codes we send into our platforms. Now, it's important to note here, not all marketing channels are necessarily controlled by campaign tracking codes. However, more than likely, most, if not all, campaign tracking codes will affect your marketing channels if managed correctly. Now, remember the conversation that we had earlier about different incarnations of a character that we saw in a TV show. Naturally, you have to have different directors, you got storytellers and producers who come along, and they all want to put their own spin on the story, right? I mean, let's talk about all the different versions that we've had to endure for just one logo, okay? If you think about it, it's not all that different in the marketing world either. I mean, everyone has their own little twist that they want to put on, on every campaign, every campaign. Sorry, every campaign tracking code floating out around there that no one can decipher. Worse yet, there's no accountability because no one is truly sure who created. Now, it's up to an analyst to take all of these disparate campaign tracking codes and attempt to create classifications for the rest of us to understand what everything means. The only way we manage all this complexity is by establishing what we call standards. If you're going to have clean marketing channels, and if you want to keep your classification rules to a minimum, then the work you do up front will reduce your vulnerabilities later. And trust me, most everyone has some kind of help starting out. So if you don't know where to start, you might take a look at something like Google's campaign URL builder to get your creative juices going. The point is, your campaign tracking codes need to have some components that help you understand some or all of the following items. And here we go. Channel. Just like it sounds, this is the marketing channel. So emails, display, social media, direct mail, QR codes, think along those lines. Source. This is your referrer, okay? This can also be used to demonstrate a source of funding for a campaign. So your examples can be, think about like Google My Business or a newsletter, or more in general, this could also be considered like a promotion. Was it paid? Is it owned? Or maybe it's even like a social grab. Medium. How was the message actually delivered? So examples of this could be like a single subject or multi-subject email, maybe a banner ad, and then like your actual social, your social medium, which was like your Facebook, Twitter, then like Instagram, even like your iHeartRadio and YouTube. You get the gist. The next thing would be your actual campaign name. Now, in this case, you want to make sure that you're keeping it like real short and sweet. Content. Now, this is one of the first of two optional flags, and this is where you might want to indicate, different sections of an email that users are interacting with when they click through. Now, this is something that's really important, and I was actually just talking to somebody about something about this today. Now, you're already tracking what people are doing inside of a website. If you also want to understand what people are actually doing inside of your emails, and you really do, you've got buttons, you have banners, you have all this stuff that's going on inside of your emails. If you want to understand what's going on inside of your websites, you definitely want to know what people are doing inside of your emails too. So guess what? This is where you want to tag too. You want to tag your buttons, you want to tag your banners. Content, it's important. So tag it. Okay. Term. This is your second optional flag. This can be used for paid search terms. Of course, you always have the option to bring in additional elements to your team. Well, you know what I mean. The point is, it's one team, and you don't keep switching out different incarnations of your team. This is your hall of justice, okay? And you need to then lock it in. Then spread the word and build your documentation. I can't emphasize this enough. You need to centralize it. In fact, there are actually tools out there to help you maintain your standards. Of course, finding the right tool to manage your workload will be up to you. So if you feel like you've got a pretty light load of campaign tracking codes out there to start out, You might feel comfortable just using, like Microsoft Excel and setting up a few formulas and maybe a couple of macros to make your job a little easier and leave it at that. In fact, we managed to do that for a number of years in my previous role. And I can even show you an example right now of how you can make something like this work for you fairly easily using an example of an email campaign called Save Krypton. I'm going to drop out of this presentation very quickly to pull up Excel and show you that exact example. So here's what I'm doing, and I'm going to make sure that this is big enough. And guys, are we good so far?
I say you're living on the edge, going out of the presentation and opening Excel. Who knows what's going to happen?
Well, yeah, I'm just going to say, can everybody see the screen so far? Are we still good?
We see your Excel.
Yeah, you see it? Okay, and I'm going to blow this up so that everybody can see this. Do we have any questions so far? Are we good?
Yes, perfect.
All right, so here's what I'm going to do. Just to make this nice and easy, I'm going to do just a real quick copy and paste. I'm going to scroll this over so that it doesn't clip here. So here's what I'm going to do. So the way that this works, I'm going to just grab the campaign name, kind of like what I was talking about, to make this easy. So I'm going to do a Save Krypton here for a campaign name. Cancel. Oh, hey, what do you know? I just created an error in my own campaign tracking. And we're going to do that, and we'll do a very quick landing page. And I can't see things. Is everybody following okay?
Yep, I see the URL going in and your campaign name. Yep, no spaces.
And we're going to go ahead and do it. We're going to do a channel. Yep, no spaces. No spaces at all. That's the idea when we're doing this kind of a thing. Oh, it didn't paste in right. There we go. Do that. We'll do paid source. Try that. See if it's grabbing it.
Yeah, Jeff, I gotta confess, I'm not the best with Superman. So I tried putting it in chat, but I think chat was, I don't know, not loving me. I could think of like the two people that went to space recently. We could do I could do Sir Richard Branson, on his Virgin Galactica, and Bezos in his Blue Origin or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are fun to watch. I mean, not as cool as Superman. I do love Superman, but.
And then we'll just go ahead and do a quick banner like this on here. So if you can see real quickly, this is how it goes and builds something like this very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to make sure that everybody can see this. I can blow it up even more if needed.
Oh yeah, that'd be nice.
So this is basically how it builds it. And and everybody, this is just a very quick example how it can build it. This just gives you a generic idea of building a campaign ID. Mm-hmm. There's so many different examples out there how it can be done. This is just, again, it's building a standard. And this is what I'm talking about for everybody. Build your standard, okay? Now, that's what I'm going to do from there.
Yeah.
Let me come, and I'm going to go ahead and come back into the presentation.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead and get a quick drink before I go back.
Drop-down boxes, which that way it already creates that governance built into the Excel file.
Exactly. Having that drop-down, building your standards, and that's what I'm going to get back to here in just a sec, is having your drop-downs. Exactly, and that's what it does is building your standard. So now what I'm going to do is get back into my presentation.
Right, you're able to come back in, no problems. Woo! Kryptonite converted.
So what I really want everybody to understand here is that sharing your standards with multiple people across multiple organizations does become very challenging when you put them into an Excel workbook, particularly if tweaks can happen on a regular basis. And trust me, they do, particularly in the very beginning. So, well, scratch that. They actually can happen during any phase of your product. but I digress. So what I'm trying to say here is that when you need to democratize your standards, you may need to think bigger by going with some, larger tools that can both automate your standards and apply them while also keeping a historical record of your campaign tracking codes for future reference. So companies like Salesforce Marketing Cloud or ObservePoint at least can provide, the functionality of like automated campaign tracking code creation, allowing you to have like a preset or built-in template, or you can use tools like Claravine that function much like your Excel spreadsheet, where you can literally pick and choose your campaign ID values and then build them on the fly before downloading and storing a set of them to your hard drive and then sending them on to your marketing organization to be used in their campaigns. Now, the beauty of these tools, is many have integrations with Adobe Analytics, allowing, for shortening and or obfuscation that can be then decoded with classification rules. That means that you're no longer constrained to revealing your entire campaign tracking codes in the URL address window if you don't want to. And speaking with any of these partners also gives you the opportunity to determine exactly what your options are in each case. So,
don't be obfuscating it, because then I can't be all judgy when I look at parameters. I want to be like, I see what you're tracking. Don't obfuscate it.
Yeah, but obfuscation's more fun, But no matter what solution you guys decide that you want to put in place or how much documentation you have backing up your process and standards, you may also find that it's valuable to have the support of an executive sponsor and or leadership to ensure that your program remains on track. Because guess what? People come and go inside your organization all the time. Now that you're on the path to cleaning up your marketing channels, I have one more word of advice for you guys, okay? Don't cross your streams, okay? So that would be bad. Now, what am I talking about? Well, yeah, you probably just, you're trying to get over the fact that I just jumped away from the DC universe, but
exactly, where did Ghostbusters come from?
Right. Yeah, but remember, I did grow up going to the movie theater. Okay, so you could say that the world of movie trivia is my oyster, guys. Okay?
Oh my goodness.
So, all right, haha. So, and you know what? Going to the movie theater is actually a great way for me to demonstrate exactly what I want to talk about next, which is internal versus external campaign tracking codes. So let's use 2 QR codes as an example. Everything we've covered up until now has addressed what we would traditionally consider an external campaign tracking code, but we have internal sources that are just as important. And if we want to keep everything clean, consider this kind of scenario. Your movie theater has any number of promotions running in both print and digital form all the time. So for example, say you have a current $5 special coupon for popcorn and soda in the local paper. Everyone would agree this qualifies as a traditional external campaign, right? Okay. Now, here's a different scenario. You managed to get to the theater a good hour before the movie started, and then they let you in just as the doors open. You're really happy because you got your choice of any seat in the theater, and you're all set to just relax and wait for the movie to start and casually watch the movie trailers while you check your Instagram page. And then this ad flashes up on the screen. So let's take a look at it. What's going on? Some of the people in the theater are going to scan it, right? Well, after they do that, they're going to get something like this on their phone, and then they're going to walk out to the concession stand to show the person behind the counter, get their snacks, and most importantly, get their discount. So what kind of campaign is this one? That's right. It's an internal campaign. Does anyone have any questions about the differences?
Can we stop a minute so I can go make some popcorn? Now I want popcorn.
You want some popcorn? I made you hungry, right?
You did. Lots of butter too.
Right. So hopefully everybody knows the difference, right? Right? Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right. Cool. So let's do a little bit of tech talk here. So what's really cool here. So first off, regular campaign tracking codes. The nice thing about like the regular campaign tracking code is it's already relegated to its own EVAR, right? And more often than not, it typically expires after 30 days. But you can actually go in there and change it if you want to. And we already talked about it, that it can affect the marketing channels. And if you look at it, this is how you typically will, call it out, that CID equals. Now, the thing is, you can also get into all the fun stuff with attribution and all those wonderful things. Now, the other thing is here, let's talk about the internal campaign codes. It requires its own EVAR. You can actually even use more than one. Also, the expiration can vary. You can do it within a day. You can do multiple days. You've got all of the, you can do it just about whatever you want with it. It operates completely outside of marketing channels. And this is the thing that you can actually bring up to your marketing group as well. It gives you a lot more latitude, so that you can actually do some things with, with your internal campaigns that doesn't affect your marketing channels, which is fantastic. You also have the ability to call it differently within your query string. So now you've got a little bit more that you can do. And I've got some additional links that I'm going to provide you in a little while that will give you even more information about internal campaign tracking codes. So now it's time for you to go pick your own team for internal campaign tracking codes. And you know what? From here, you've got a little bit more free reign, but I will also give you a fair warning. Keep it clean, because it's going to be a bumpy ride. Just like external campaign tracking codes, you've got all the same trappings and just as many opportunities for everything to get just as messy and just as quickly. So make sure that you start out with a plan. So like I said, find an EVAR, find multiple EVARs, make sure that you know how long you want to make it last before they expire. Make sure, perhaps you'll want to have, like I said, perhaps you want to have multiple EVARs. Maybe you want to have classification rules aligned the same way that you have, the classification rules aligned to your external campaign tracking codes. Remember, attribution, that we were talking about with regular campaign tracking codes. Now you've got all the same thing that you can do with internal campaign tracking codes. These are all important questions that you need to think about and answer. And as you can see from the choices right here before you, you are not confined to just one universe of answers. So after the question and answer, I just told you, we've got, on my next slide, it gives you some places to start, including a link to a blog article written by a long time ago, by a current champion that you might know. I think his name is Adam Greco. However, at this point, I'm happy to turn this discussion over to the group now for discussions and ask questions at this point. This ends my presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. And have a great afternoon, guys. Thank you.
This has been awesome, Jeff. Oh my goodness. Scooby-Doo might be more. Say it one more time. Sorry, Jeff.
This is the slide with all that info. There's this, and the one that I was talking about. There, let's see, the internal campaign tracking. There it is. Internal campaign tracking analytics demystified. If Adam Greco is listening, it's out there from long time ago. But I'll tell you what, that's where I actually learned about internal campaign tracking. I can't remember when I first discovered it. It was great. So great stuff, great material out there to learn about. I will tell you. So more to learn about there. This is just the starting point, and some go out there and learn about it, people. It's really some good information to read.
Yeah. Rochelle said that she's used Clarivine, so that's cool.
In terms of
Yep. Sorry. Go ahead, Luke. Sorry.
In terms of some of the other users, I know by default it was like for 30 days in terms of expiration. Do just want to know how some of the other of our participants do we know what your company sets it at? Is it still 30 days, or do you guys use something else?
So we have it set at 30 days for regular campaign tracking. And then on the internal campaign tracking, we're using 6 days.
Oh,
So
okay.
basically just under a week
Mhm.
for internal campaign tracking. So that way you've got, and that's the nice thing with like the marketing channels. That's why we did the internal campaign tracking. We have eSpots and things like that that we're just starting to do some things. So within KPF, we have some stuff that we like to really follow. So it's a really neat way to make sure that you're not affecting your marketing channels, especially with email and things like that. Because if you think about it, internal campaign tracking, you don't want to mess up stuff. So a regular campaign, and this is why we started looking at internal campaign tracking. A regular campaign, if you think about it, as soon as you overwrite a campaign, you're not tracking it anymore. So campaign tracking, so you've got a campaign tracking code. Somebody clicks on that link. So now that's what you're tracking. If you've got an internal campaign tracking code that somebody clicks on, you want to follow that one too. So you want to follow the external campaign tracking code that they clicked on, and you also want to follow all those internal campaigns as well. So if they do like a special eSpot or something like that, you want to follow the conversions for those just as much as you want to follow the external campaigns that they're tracking as well. So you want all of those conversions. So you don't want to wipe out what they did externally that brought them in. You want to follow everything that they're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How did your company go, or your group go about using 6 days for internal?
That was actually a decision that I did not make.
And the other question.
Think about it. It actually has to do with how our ads roll. So grocery does stuff with like our weekly ads. So our weekly ads rotate on like a weekly basis. So that's actually a very good, just kind of a good rule of thumb.
Okay. And a couple other questions is, how do you do attribution with CIDs? So that's one question, and we're running out of time, so I'm just going to roll that up into the other one. And then at what level of granularity do you track? Igor looks like he's looking at trying to measure the asset utilization, but I haven't figured out a good way of doing it.
Are you talking about the asset utilization for? I'm sorry, you're talking about just the campaign tracking in general?
I think so. Yeah. So at what level of granularity do you do the campaign tracking? Then that's
a lot of it. We're just doing last touch, but we're starting to do some of the things with like. So we're starting to look at some of the more of the attribution. Some of the attribution. We're just starting to look at some of those things. Okay. So I like to look at some of the 14-day. Some of those things, because that way you can look at, especially when, well, the other thing, here's the other thing that I'm just starting to look at too. If you're just looking at, with marketing channels, if you're only looking at one thing, like your orders and things like that, just for marketing channels, and I was reading Avinash just the other day, you should also be looking at other things like bounce rate. You should be looking at, because if you're only looking at one piece of it, then you're not looking at your total, like what he's talking about, cost against your total conversion funnel. So that's something that I actually shared with one of my managers, because it's really interesting to look at what's happening with your marketing channels as it relates to other things further up your funnel. So if you need to look at the cost that it takes to get to what you're doing. So if, for instance, if you're doing paid ads, well, how much money are you paying on the front end in order to get that conversion? So that's the thing that I've been talking to, other people here. It's like, what do we really need to be considering when we say, okay, great, we got so much on natural search. Well, it's like, well, how much did we have to pay in order to get that natural search, to accomplished? So those are the things that we're now trying to understand. So, and it's just very thought provoking, I think. Right. So again, I really appreciate everybody hanging on while we got things figured out with the
There's a good one to end on. Samantha wrote here, Jeff. She said, "Great job, Jeff. Not sure if I'm more impressed by your campaign tracking knowledge or your superhero knowledge."
Thanks, Sam. That's thank you very much.
It was cool.
Mhm.
Well, sweet. Well, yeah, we'll get this posted out on the YouTube channel so everybody can go back and listen and take notes and get those links that Jeff provided. So thanks for sharing all that good link too, Jeff. And yeah, like Luke said, thank you guys all so much for joining. We'll see you all later.
All righty.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
All right, bye.
Bye.